Man, I don't understand. I don't understand. As many black people have become disillusioned with white evangelicals, I've become confused as to why. I mean, we've seen for years this group backing the most racist presidents. Trump is no different. They backed Ronald Reagan, George W. They backed Richard Nixon over John F. Kennedy. They even backed anti-civil rights giant Barry Goldwater over Lyndon B. Johnson. And I'm not saying any of these guys were going to be superstars for black people. The point is, they've always chosen the most racist, vile characters on the ticket. They've shown their true colors for years. They want a lily white nation, a lily white Jesus, and a lily white picket fence to keep all the other races, people, especially you, out. Let me say this. I'm not a Republican, nor Democrat, Christian, or Muslim. But I'm not blind either. Where are the evangelicals when drugs are being pumped into your neighborhoods? Why do they never speak of the disparity of resources in the inner city? The complete failure of the school systems, the abject poverty caused by these social injustices. They sit back and watch the formula that created ghettos play out. They're as quiet as, excuse the pun, church mice. They saw everyone receive reparations for the hideous behavior of their forefathers. But you didn't get anything. And they didn't say anything. At least I didn't hear them. Now trust me when I say, I share in their concerns on abortion, pedophilia, gender and other sexual issues, and other social hot button topics. But when it comes to a pressing issue such as racism or discrimination, they're too silent for me. And in this case, silence is complicity. They never showed President Obama the same love they showed Donald Trump. I often wonder if they think their white Jesus would endorse Trump. I wouldn't doubt it, because, I mean, they are his servants. In this upcoming election, I know both candidates are heavily flawed. Both candidates are racist. It's just that them believing in Trump so fully raises an alarm for me. He's a sexist, a racist, a xenophobe, a liar, among other things. Now, Obama wasn't perfect, but he had more humane qualities in his pinky finger than Trump will ever have. Yet, the religious right tortured him. That's what I mean. The only obvious reason can be color. You talk of forgiveness, absolution, and other noble ideas with Trump. With Obama, you had nothing but venom. Your racism can no longer hide behind the pulpit. You speak of being like Jesus. It must be the Jesus Caesar Borgia, because it's certainly not the one in the scriptures. Your actions are diametrically opposed to the so-called Jesus of scripture. And I know why. And you do too. Why don't we let the people know? You down? Good. I always hear so-called awake black Christians say Christianity started in Africa. Thing is, there is some truth to that. Though they claim the first use of the term Christian started in Antioch between 70 and 90 AD, history shows us the first Christians were the Egyptian followers of a god known as Serapis, some 300 years before Antioch. Serapis as a god was in reality a Macedonian, non-Egyptian ruler by the name of Ptolemy I Lagi, or Soltaire. He used this created god and religion to maintain control of the Egyptians. It was basically a cult that held sway for approximately 600 years until it was threatened by a man named Arius. Arius started poking holes in this newly formed religion, and that was the problem. Just give me a little time, and I'm going to show you the religious right and who they really serve. First, we need a historical backdrop to put things in their proper perspective. Arius was a priest in Alexandria, Egypt, who was a major instigator in the Arian controversy. This controversy centered on the nature of the Son of God. I bet you thought Jesus was always considered God or a part of the Godhead. That's not true. That idea was basically voted on by men who had never spoken to the Most High. So you get emotionally tied to something. You want to argue before you hear the facts. So just settle down. Anyway, Arian argued that this, now pay close attention, Serapis was not a god, but a created being. A beautiful creation, but a creation just the same. Did you notice I didn't say Jesus? I said Serapis. That's because the Jesus model hadn't been created yet. And for the record, it was Iusus at the time, not Jesus. The name Jesus wouldn't appear until at least 800 years later, in the 12th century. You see, the Arius controversy attacked Serapis, resulting in a Christian mob destroying the Serapian temple in Alexandria, Egypt in 385 AD. Now, let's go back to 70 AD and the claim of the first Christians being in Antioch. What's the climate like in 70 AD? Well, Jerusalem is being ransacked by the Roman general Vespasian. Yet Paul of the Bible was preaching in Europe 20 years earlier. In fact, Paul's letters to the churches were written around 57 AD, near the end of Paul's third missionary journey. At this time, the Emperor of Rome and Pharaoh of Egypt was a 19-year-old kid by the name of Nero, who adopted the title Emperor Nero, ruler of rulers, chosen by Ptah, beloved by Isis, the sturdy-armed one who struck foreign lands, victorious for Egypt, ruler of rulers, chosen of none, who loves him. Isis, Ptah, and Nun are Egyptian deities. So you see, just like the Greeks before them, Rome too got in on the Egyptian mysteries. At this time, Rome was suffering through a failed economy and a grain shortage. So Nero's reign lasted only 14 years until 68 AD, when he supposedly committed suicide amid revolts and military discontentments. But his reign is what sparked the revolt of the Hebrews in Jerusalem, as Nero tried to force them to worship him as a god, and they wasn't having it. After a series of nondescript emperors reigning for 3 and 7 months respectively, Vespasian became emperor in December 22nd, AD 69 to be exact. He was the founder of the Flavian dynasty. You see, they had dynasties back then. You had the Claudio dynasty, that was the Caesars. Well, this was the Flavian dynasty. And remember the date, December 22nd. Because it's kind of important when you're dealing with Jesus, remember. Did you know there are historians and theology majors who believe the Flavians invented Jesus Christ? And before you get all bent out of shape, I'm talking about Jesus, not Yeshua. There is a difference. For example, Jesus was hung on a cross, while Yeshua was hung on a tree. just like the Hebrews during slavery. Jesus was born in December. Yeshua was probably born around September. Yeshua came in the Father Yah's name. Jesus came in his own name. You see, that's what this entire investigation concerns. The creation that took place in Nicaea, Turkey in 325 AD. That's what we're building up to. We're getting to the image that the Christian right, the White Evangelicals, the image they serve, and why it doesn't resemble the Messiah of the Bible. After General Vespasian routed the Hebrews in 70 AD, the Hebrews fled into Africa. That is, the ones who escaped death and slavery. You see, due to these Hebrew people's disobedience, they've been enslaved throughout their history, prompting Jeremiah to ask, was Israel put here just to be slaves? That's a key indicator as to who the true house of Israel is. Anyway, as the Hebrews entered Africa, they eventually make their way to what is the west coast of Africa. Since 70 AD, Christianity hadn't taken off in Rome yet. In fact, in Rome, you had an amalgamation of all types of religious systems. Rome was heavily influenced by Greek mythology during this time. 70 AD, And the Greeks and their mythology had roots in the Egyptian systems. So, for example, the Egyptian god Anubis would be the equivalent to Thanatos. Forgive me, I be chopping these words. And so forth and so on. And so the Roman gods had gods to equal that of the Greek gods. You get it? This is what Rome looked like in the first century. So at this point, we're not talking about any type of racism as such. But these systems did get their start in Africa. But what Rome did was try and tie their newly created religion back to the Hebrews and their monotheism. You see, history suggests that St. Peter of the Bible, moved the religion's headquarters from Jerusalem to Rome. Something I find very difficult to believe considering Yeshua's attitude toward the Gentiles. But that's another video. At any rate, during the first century, this Hebrew thought is turned into a Hellenized religion with converts by the thousands. All starting from a convert by the name of Paul. Paul is attacked by the Hebrews, the followers of James, and the Romans. By the middle of the first century, the Hebrews separated from Christianity. And by 62 AD, both Peter and Paul were executed. Christianity was entirely in the hands of the Gentiles. So by the time Rome ransacks Jerusalem, you start getting this New Testament offering salvation to the isles of the Gentiles. That makes sense. By the end of the first century, persecution of the Hebrews was back in full force under an emperor by the name of Domitian. That would be the backdrop that prompted John to write Revelations, urging the Hebrews to stand firm against what he called Babylon. You see, in those days, Babylon was a code word that dealt with any treachery from foreign nations or those who weren't Hebrews. Like the remembrance of 9/11 or the Alamo. John was telling the Israelites what was to come. At this point, I feel the need to express to you that at this point in Christianity, it isn't about race. In fact, the religion was firmly in the grasp of so-called black people. The Hebrews who followed Christianity, there wasn't many, and the Coptic Egyptians. Remember, this movement started with African peoples. By the time of the Council of Nicaea and the controversy started by Arius, you start to see a shift in the movement. The emperor of Rome at the time, the Emperor Constantine, was a pagan. Christian apologists Christian apologetics try to paint him as some holy superstar convert. He wasn't. Like most men of power, he tried to seize on an opportunity to consolidate his power by unifying the world under one flag. That being this Christianity. They say he didn't change the Sabbath or adopt pagan festivals. Okay. But we do know Christmas and Easter are two examples of pagan holidays. And we also know the Most High never changed the Sabbath. All one has to do is read the Nicene Creed. That was created through these ecumenical councils. This is how Christianity got to where it is today. The creed actually starts off well, no problems. Remember, one of the reasons for the council was because of an African named Arius. Arius claimed this image, not Jesus, but Serapis, was created by man and forged with man's hands. This is why it states in the Nicene Creed, begotten, not made. They stress that because of Arius. The name Jesus Christ was not in the original creed. In fact, the name Jesus wasn't in the original King James Bible. The idea of Jesus being God didn't start until after so-called Jesus was gone. Listen, I know who Yeshua HaMashiach is. I'm only pointing out the history of the Jesus these evangelicals worship. After these councils, and there were a few, at least 7, the Hebrew way of life had become a religion. You know, religion means to tie back to or bind. Question is, tie back to what? Bind to what? Were these ecumenical councils ordained by the Most High? Anyway, as I stated, the original Hebrews by the 14th and 15th century were in Spain, Portugal, and West Africa mostly. If you've ever wondered or heard an Italian use the derogatory term Guinea when referring to a black person, now you know why. The truth is on the walls and old books. I mean 200 to 300-year-old books. The Hebrews were kicked out of Europe and sent to Africa and the island of San Tome because they completely refused to accept the Christianity that you cling to today. Now, why do you think these God-fearing people wouldn't accept this religion? I mean, it is their religion, right? No. Not in its present form. Like Stevie said, when you believe in things that you don't understand, you suffer. Look, by the time the Roman Empire falls in 439 AD, Christianity, or Catholicism, is completely weaponized, and the foot soldiers are the missionaries. Do you even know what the Inquisition was about? Many black Hebrews were martyred at that time. In 1508, Pope Julius II had Michelangelo paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, and the changing of faces was on. During the Renaissance period, all iconic images were reimagined white. Europe set about changing dates, images, names, and the like. And when they couldn't fake it, they simply remodeled it. There are many examples of this whitewashing. just imagine the ones we don't know about. Just remember this. The older the art, the darker the image. So, you see, the form of Christianity that these white evangelicals practice is a white supremacist religion, not the one that came out of Africa. Since at least the 13th century, this Christianity has been the tool of the elite to get the peasants to fall in line. And it is equipped with a racial hierarchy. These evangelicals are simply following protocols. And I'm not including all evangelicals. But like the good cops, you know, the bad cop, you know you got good cops too. They're just never around when you need them. Peace.